The more obscure the Pokemon fact, the better it tends to be, and in this video I have got a batch of extremely obscure Pokemon facts to share with you that you may not know, so let's jump in. Soliera is a unique character that was introduced in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, who, for all intents and purposes, is essentially an alien from another world. She shows up in Alola during the events of the game, and she wears a little backpack-like device that you almost never even really see in the games, but it actually holds a really interesting secret. In her official concept art, you can see that the backpack has this little symbol on the middle of it, and it was revealed in the semi-recent Game Freak Terra leak that this symbol was actually different during development, and it used to look like this. But the reason why this symbol was changed is actually the interesting part. According to documents within the leak, the symbol was changed because it was thought to be too similar to the location pins from Google Maps, which do indeed bear a strong resemblance to this original symbol, so it was probably a good thing that it was changed. At the time it was introduced, Sableye was the very first Pokemon to have 0 weaknesses thanks to its Ghost and Dark typing, and while it doesn't come across in the games, this is actually a very intentional reference to Sableye's origins. Sableye is based on the Hopkinsville Goblin, an alien creature that was reportedly encountered in Kentucky in the 1950s. Amongst all of the details of the encounter, one thing that was reported about the creatures at the time was that they were unaffected by bullets that had been fired at them, which is most likely what inspired the concept of Sableye having 0 weaknesses. At least until the fairy type showed up. Another very cool reference that is hiding in plain sight has to do with Pokemon eggs. The default appearance of Pokemon eggs is most likely a literal Easter egg in reference to Yoshi. Not only do Yoshi eggs and Pokemon eggs look essentially identical, but the Yoshi game on NES was actually developed by Pokemon developer Game Freak, making this a likely reference to their own past work. In 2024, Pokemon held an official giveaway for one of the strangest Pokemon-themed items ever conceived. This occurred via one of Pokemon's official Japanese Twitter accounts, so there could be some kind of language or cultural element to this that I'm just not getting, but basically, to celebrate the 6th anniversary of this Twitter account, Pokemon held a contest, with the winners of this contest receiving one of the strangest pieces of Pokemon merch imaginable. A set of Vivillon-themed guitar picks were given away as the prize for this contest, with this item in fact being so special that it was not even available for sale otherwise, and only 66 of them were given away. Now, as a prize for the 6th anniversary of this Twitter account, Vivillon actually makes a lot of sense, since it is Pokemon number 666 in the Pokedex. But I have no idea where in the world the idea for a set of Vivillon-themed guitar picks would come from, especially as a super limited item that wasn't even made available for sale. Like I said, maybe I'm just not getting it because this is all in Japanese, but it definitely seems like one of the stranger things that Pokemon has done. Moving along though, did you know that one of the most common mundane items in Pokemon history actually has some neat lore to it? The origin of the fresh water item was actually revealed in the Japanese versions of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, where it was said within the freshwater item description that it actually comes from Mount Silver. And from the mundane to the absolutely iconic, these are some early drafts of none other than the Pokemon logo. These were only recently revealed by the creator of the logo itself, Chris Maple, who also recounted some interesting details about the story of the logo's creation. According to him, Nintendo came to him with a request to make the logo after some other attempts hadn't worked out, and they were running short on time. He had just 1 month to come up with something, meaning that one of the most iconic and recognizable logos in the world was essentially made at the last second. The reason it had such a tight deadline was because it needed to be ready for the reveal of Pokémon Red and Blue at E3 in 1998. But even though the logo was finished in time, it still wasn't quite the logo that we know today. The original logo that debuted had a slightly different P and E, which were then adjusted prior to the game's official launch into the final product that we know today. And speaking of early Pokemon content, I have some more that I want to cover in the form of early Pokemon names. These come from the Terra Leak once again, and I have already covered some of these names before in previous videos, but I figured I would cover another batch here since there are so many interesting ones. These also specifically have to do with Hoenn Pokemon, and without any further ado, here are some of the early names. Shroomish almost got named Mushroom, which is honestly a great name, while another name that was proposed for Shedinja was Huscada. Aggron was going to be called Ronarch, which is another clever name, and speaking of clever names, an early name proposal for Gulpin was Goblin, coming from Gobble and Goblin. Lastly, another interesting one has to do with Wynot, as it was originally proposed to be named You Bet, which clearly follows the same naming scheme as Wynot, but according to the developers, Wynot worked better, so they opted for it instead. And just because I love cut content so much, I've got one more piece of it to share, and this time it comes from Pokemon Stadium. There were actually plans in the original Pokemon Stadium for a Jigglypuff minigame that was scrapped from the final product, and whose remnants still seem to be within the game's files. It was apparently called Jigglypuff Doodle, and was apparently a drawing minigame of some kind, although how the game would have actually worked isn't quite clear. Getting back to the world of references though, a rather interesting reference was made fairly recently in the anime in Pokemon Journeys. In the episode Memories of a Warming Kindness, it's revealed that Krissa, who is one of Professor Cerise's assistants, is a huge Psyduck fan. Amongst all of her Psyduck merch, a Psyduck-themed album can be spotted that is a pretty clear and funny reference to the famous Pink Floyd album, The Dark Side of the Moon. Now, this next one isn't exactly something that's hidden, but it's also kind of a deep cut that you probably wouldn't know about if you weren't there, and looking back on it, it's both weird and pretty wild. In 2006, Pokemon had a big 10th anniversary party in New York that also acted as the finals for the Video Game National Championships at the time. And the host of this party was none other than Hulk Hogan. It gets even crazier though, because Hulk Hogan, in addition to hosting this official Pokemon event, even acted as a commentator for the finals of the Video Game National Championships.
It's like he's paralyzed.
Wow.
Gosh, over. Well, they're both using protection. That's awesome.
And even though this was definitely a less formal affair than the National and World Championships of today, Hulk Hogan commentating on competitive Pokemon in any capacity is the kind of fever dream that deserves to be unearthed and shared with the masses, and is definitely one of the stranger moments in Pokemon history. If you enjoyed all of these obscure facts though, be sure to leave a like, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. I will be back with another video very soon, and until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.